Pitcher and Marie, welcome.
Thank you.
It's great to have you guys in here.
Well, we're excited to be here. A little nervous, but we're excited.
Don't worry about it. You'll forget about all the cameras and everything in a minute. Now, Pitcher, you're an acolyte,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
You're the head acolyte.
Yes.
And then Marie, you're with the choir.
Yes.
So what exactly does an acolyte do as compared to, the other people that are involved in the mass?
We assist the priests and deacons. We're we're typically like altar servers, but we serve more on the altar where we can help set up the altar, and we help out with baptisms and weddings and funerals and just assist them in any way they need it.
And have you all been in your current capacity at St. Faustina for a while now? How long have you been doing this?
I was the first acolyte that was actually instituted from St. Faustina.
Okay.
Like we had, Deacon Ray was acolyte before and came to the parish. I forgot the year that I was instituted, but it's probably the first 2 years of the church I became acolyte.
Y'all have been here since the beginning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Very first mass.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Those were exciting days, huh?
It was exciting and new. And I think it's really neat that Pete was one of the acolytes at the time, and he's the one who invited Pitcher to start thinking about being an acolyte, and he really encouraged him. And I know that Pitcher's very grateful for Pete for doing that, because it's funny that you said that we're very visual, in the community, because with Pitcher, he's so humble. He really practices, exercises humility so much. He never wanted to serve in the front when we've always done things in the past. He's always been in the back, and that's how he wanted to. He never wanted to be seen.
Oh, okay.
And so it's so interesting that he's in this position now, because it's totally not what he ever aspired to do. And it was a little bit of a struggle for him to kind of to kind of put himself out there in front of everybody, because he really just likes to serve under the radar.
Were you nervous at first?
I still get nervous. And
really? Until now?
I do.
You've been doing it for so long. And
yeah, because in the way I feel like it has to be perfect. And Father Dad, if something's not right, he starts squirming. And
I don't know if he knows that, but he does now.
He never gets mad, but when he starts squirming, I feel like, okay, something's messed up. And, and it's just, we have so many steps that just has to be smooth. And
you're probably the only one that notices that, though.
There's probably a couple of us that really get into it, but yeah.
Do you see them shaking their heads at mass like, you messed up again?
No. No, but I know when something happens.
Very subtle squirming, like nobody else notices it.
Right.
Okay.
He does.
Now, Pitcher, that's an unusual name. Is there meaning behind that or a history behind it?
It's an old last name. It was a family last name.
Okay.
The Pitcher family. And then they just kind of converted it to a first name. And
okay. I haven't met a whole lot of Pitchers, though. I didn't grow up here in Texas. So
no, I have not met any other pitchers.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. So did you feel like you had to become like a baseball pitcher growing up, or did
I used to play Little League, and the announcer would say pitchers on the pitcher, and they kind of stop. It's like, and they have pitchers on the pitcher's mound. And
so you were a pitcher.
I was.
Were you both from Houston? Did you grow up here in Houston?
I grew up in Lafayette, Louisiana.
And I grew up in a very small town in Louisiana called Iota. Not even a traffic light.
Oh, really?
Not even a traffic light. They had an elementary school, a little junior high and high school, a couple of churches, a few little stores, and that was it. And that was about 45 minutes from where Pitcher grew up. And I ended up going to college at USL. It's UL now, but in Lafayette, in the same town that he grew up. And
so you went to college together?
No, we didn't.
How'd y'all meet?
That is a fun story. Always, it's very, do you want to tell it or do you want me to?
It does whatever.
Okay. Well,
I can start it out.
You can start it out.
During my, God just wanted, I kind of stepped away from the church, and I was trying to get back into it. And I really wanted to meet Mrs. Wright. And it was a joke that we had a small group, Miss Laura Lahey. She had a group called Coram Deo for college and young professionals. Mm-hmm. And I asked my sister to take me because she knew the whole group. And, and the whole group thing was to meet Mrs. Wright.
That's why he went.
And our first meeting, this beautiful little blonde walks in, sits down. We sit there. They're passing a tray of cookies around. It stopped at her.
It just stopped at me.
And she eats supper. I mean, she ate the whole thing of cookies.
That was my supper. I didn't have any money.
Cookies.
Yeah. And I told my sister, I said, I'm going to go on a date with her within 6 months. I don't know what the time was.
And all I was focused on was the cookies.
Yeah, she probably didn't even notice me. I didn't have a cookie on my... And she's still like that. I mean, food, it's really big for her.
It is a big thing. I'm a Cajun girl.
Yeah.
Food is a really big thing for us. Mm-hmm.
But we ended up going on a date, and neither one of us were in the right place spiritually yet. Mm-hmm. And it just didn't really pan out. And we kept going to Coram Deo, and we did high school retreats. The retreat started in 1992, and once a year we'd have it's more of a confirmation retreat, but at the time, this was the only confirmation retreat for Lafayette.
Okay.
So we had up to like 220 kids, plus supporting staff, and we always did that together. And and the priest at St. Pius asked me to be the youth director.
Okay.
And I asked Marie if she would help because Marie's like real artsy and I'm just not really good at coming up with programs and stuff. So we did that together. Mm-hmm.
And we're still friends, just friends.
And this was during college?
No, we had both graduated already. Okay. Yeah.
We were special friends forever.
Well, okay, I have to insert something. I knew he was very special. You don't meet men like this every day. But I wasn't ready to commit. God hadn't put it on my heart yet. I knew I loved him, but I wasn't in love with him, like that romantic, but I knew he was amazing. And I didn't want to let him go. So we weren't quite dating, but we were more than friends. So
you were still in the friend zone, though, huh?
Right.
Special friends. Yeah. We coined it special friends.
It's still the friend zone.
And it was. We got married in, 99. I am bad with dates. 99. So we went from 94 to 97 being friends and special friends. And there are a lot of things that led up to the point where I was like, oh my gosh, this guy is the one. And that would take hours and hours, just a lot of, but the main thing I think was he and a group of young men went to a retreat. What's the name of it? The Curcia retreat. And we had a bunch of friends that went to the closing mass. And of course, I'm late. I'm kind of perpetually late, something I really work hard on. Sometimes I'm good, sometimes not so good. So we're walking into the church late. And we were only they only had room in the foyer. So we were like in the foyer. And then the men from the retreat process in. And I remember that correctly. And as I look at him and he looks at me, and there was like this shock of electricity that went from me to him. Like it was something you could touch. It was the craziest thing. And I'm like, ooh. And it was the weirdest thing. Our eyes met and there was this electricity, like a little current. Ooh. And I'm like, holy cow. This is it. And then afterwards, the priest that was doing the retreat went to him and said, who was that girl? So he
saw it.
He saw whatever it was. He saw it. And so that was the moment that I'm like, I've got to be with this guy. He's just amazing.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then God just kind of melted the barrier, whatever it was that was holding me back. And
so after 3 years of being in the friend zone, boom, it just hits you like lightning.
Yes.
And that was it. Now, you all said that you weren't spiritually in the right place. Did you grow up Catholic?
Yes.
Yes. I grew up very Catholic. In fact, my dad was in the seminary. He was studying to be a Jesuit for 10 years.
Wow.
And then...
So he discerned out?
He discerned, yes. He just, thank you, thank you, thank you, God, because I wouldn't be here. So, yes. So we grew up Catholic. And it's really neat because we have my sisters are 4 girls, and we talk about our view of life reflects the Jesuits' way of thinking a lot. And so that's really interesting because we'll be talking about how we view a situation, and one of them say, yeah, that's very Jesuit of you to think that way. So yes, we were very influenced.
That's
grew up
interesting.
In the church.
10 years of formation before he discerned out.
Yes. So.
And I grew up very Catholic. My mom was the catechism teacher, a faith formation teacher. That's when we had it at our house every week. And but right around high school, I started getting into this party group, and I just stepped away. Like I would leave like Sunday morning, say I was going to church, and I just ride around.
But he would get a bulletin because he wanted to make sure he went to church.
So that's your proof.
He didn't want to lie to his mom. He was still a good boy. He didn't want to lie, so he went to church.
For confirmation, my mom went to church every Sunday to make sure my car was there. I mean, just because she was like, you're getting confirmed. And it was probably when I went back to Coram Deo for kind of the wrong reasons to find Mrs. Right. But I knew if I wanted to settle down, I wanted to do it the right way. And I just started learning why sins are sins. And
after each meeting, he'd get so mad because he's like, I found out another sin that I'm doing. That's another sin. And he gets so mad, but he kept coming back. There was just something that...
Yeah, I started finding out why it's a sin. And, because a lot of people that don't go through RCIA or have like the second conversion, they just kind of go with it and they start picking and choosing. But the formation I had in this group was we learned about why sins are sins. And, because you could justify anything. And, I tell my kids, you can find priests. If you shop priest or any religious, you can find one that kind of goes to what you want. And that's one thing. When we were dating, we had Monsignor Mouton, which passed away, but we'd go to confession and he was so hard on us.
Oh my gosh.
And
in Louisiana.
Correct. And that's where we were the youth ministers.
Okay.
And he was just so hard on us, but we wanted to have a chaste relationship. And if it wasn't for him, I mean, he was, like a lot of priests say, and it's true, they forget your confessions once you leave.
Not him.
He would remember, and he would say, he told Marie one time, like, I don't think you're really sorry. If you're sorry, you wouldn't have committed this sin again.
But he didn't say it that nice.
Yeah,
he was like, you say you're sorry. I mean, he was very, very
pious.
Very pious, very kind of rigid. And he was like, well, you say you're sorry, but you come in here week after week with the same sin. And I was just mortified. First of all, they had the divider. He wasn't supposed to know who I was, but he knew who I was, and he knew it was the same sin that I come. And I was mortified, but I knew it was important for me to continue going back to him because you can go to other priests and they'll say, oh, it's okay if you're really sorry, which is beautiful. And it is beautiful. But at the time I needed a shepherd that really wanted us to get to heaven. And so that's why we stuck with him when it would have been a lot easier going to a different priest.
So for you, Marie, was it the same thing? In high school, you drifted away?
No. In high school, I was the youth group president.
Oh, okay.
I was definitely a good girl. A good girl. In the first couple of years of college, I was really good. And then, like a lot of kids, started just kind of experimenting with the party lifestyle. And I never did drugs, but I did drink and do a few other things that I'm not quite proud of. And we might be getting a little too personal here, but it's nothing that we haven't shared before. While we were dating, we did chastity talks for teens, and we really just kind of laid it all out there. And that first date that we went on where he said it didn't work out, our dinner conversation was, part of their dinner conversation was, I think if you really love somebody, it would be okay to sleep with them before you're married. And God was probably like, oh, it's not time for them to get together yet. And I really think that that's when God kind of put that thing on my heart that's like, no, not until she's ready will she fall in love with him. And so he had a lot of work to do on both of us before we were supposed to be together.
Was there one real turning point for y'all, like a make or break in terms of getting the work done on yourselves?
I think by the time we started dating, I was in a really good zone. And I was, out of the two of us, I was a lot stronger. I was spiritually, like once I committed, like I'm
you were
OCD, I'm all in or all out. You know, there's no middle line for me. And the 2-3 years, I just really, God got me in the right place. And then once we started dating, I mean, I think we both, you know, we fed off each other's, you know, everybody gets weak, strong. And, you know, if I ever got weak, she was strong, vice versa.
That's kind of the beautiful way God does that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yes.
Right.
Tell me more about how, you know, you're dating and how eventually y'all got married.
Well, I think one thing was I told her one weekend, it's like, I'm sick of it. We just need to take a break. And she's like, text me. It's like, so we're not going to talk? No talking.
Sick of being a couple?
Sick of being special friends.
Oh, okay. Okay. So that's early on. Okay.
We were dating without the romance. I mean, we were like best friends. We're still best friends.
All the time. And,
you know, we were dating. I mean, it was really like.
Without the kissing.
Yeah, without the kissing. But we were there, but it wasn't committed. And I said, you know, we just need to take a break. And you can tell her about
It's tough being the mayor of the friend zone.
Right.
Seriously.
It is.
For 3 years, right? 3 years?
2-3 years, yes. And it's kind of weird because we were looking back and we're like, well, when did we start dating? When were we friends? And it just all kind of blurred together because it's hard to pinpoint an exact date that this happened and this happened and this happened. But so go ahead. I'm sorry, you were saying.
I'll let you talk about Downtown Live and.
Oh, how I told you that there were several events that happened that I was like, okay, I've got to be with him.
Yes.
And one of them was there was this event in Lafayette every Friday night called Downtown Alive, where they'd have bands, basically a street party.
Okay.
And I went over there and then I saw one of my ex-boyfriends.
Ooh.
And I went, holy cow, my picture's just so amazing. And just the contrast of my ex-boyfriend and picture. And I'm like, why am I even, you know, second guessing this? Why am I even trying to avoid or not committing? Because this man is he's amazing. He's a wonderful man. And
so much better for you than the ex-boyfriend.
Yes. And so I rode to his house. I think I called and I said, I need to see you.
Right.
I need to see you. And the rest is history.
And were you like, yes, finally?
He's probably like, oh, finally.
I'm stepping out of the friend zone now.
Right.
Yes.
And how long did y'all date before you eventually got married?
1.5 years. And then he proposed. Beautiful, beautiful proposal. He would go to this retreat in Convent, Louisiana, and called Manresa. And every Christmas they'd have this live nativity scene, and it was so beautiful. And he would usually go on his retreat around every Thanksgiving or so every November. And so he wanted to bring me back, and he said, I want you to see this nativity scene. It's beautiful. And what he was being very sneaky, and I didn't know this. I had no clue. He brings me there was this closet that they converted into an adoration chapel.
Okay.
So he was like, I want you to see this adoration chapel over there. So we went and we were praying, and then I opened my eyes and he's on his knees. And then he had the ring out. So he proposed to me in front of the Blessed Sacrament, and it was just very beautiful.
That's awesome.
Very beautiful. So
yeah, in 1998, I went to Manresa. I think it was my first retreat. And I really I was discerning about, should we get married? And I was in this adoration chapel for half of the retreat, just praying. And usually, like, I'll go on a retreat and God just doesn't snap his fingers, and I know. And I came back home, and it's like I had no clue. It's like God doesn't speak to me, and then it takes a while to kind of discern, and then I said, I just felt that it was the time to do it, and I became friends with Father Romagosa, and he was the one that's given us the tour, and we're just
the tour that
of Manresa
when he brought me.
Because women, it's a men's retreat.
Okay.
And usually women, I mean, they do have women that go there during the week, different retreats, but I asked Father Romagosa if she could come, and he didn't know anything about it. And then we just come out of the Adoration Chapel and we're engaged. And
then he renamed it the Pitcher Allendorph Chapel.
Yeah, Father Romagosa would give other people's tours, and he'd say, "This is the Pitcher Allendorph Chapel," and where you got and.
And does he tell people about the proposal?
Yes.
In the chapel?
Yes. He's since passed away, but yes, he did. Every time he'd give a tour.
So I understand you two have kids now. You have 2 kids.
We do.
Yes. We love them, and they drive us crazy. They're teenagers. So
How old are they now?
HP, or Henry, he goes by Henry now that, he's an adult.
Oh, yeah.
He is 19. He'll be 20 next month. And then Katie is 16, and she'll be 17 next month. And they're great kids.
So where are they in schooling right now?
HP's at Kansas State.
Is he in his...
He's still a freshman.
Freshman year. Okay.
Second semester.
Mm-hmm. And it's really neat. For the last probably 4 years, or all throughout high school, he would visit kind of across the street from St. Faustina, or a little bit above, a little bit further up the highway. There's this aviation community called Covey Trails. And he befriended some of the men that lived there. And these guys would take him up in their airplanes and teach him how to fly.
Oh, nice.
So he just has this passion for flying. And he started working on his pilot's license. And the first semester he was studying architecture. And then he's like, it's just not what I want to do. And then he found out that Kansas State has a satellite campus in Salina, Kansas, and they offer a bachelor's degree in pilot's license.
Oh,
so
it's a Bachelor of Science, and
Bachelor
then you
of
get your
Science.
pilot's license also. So.
Yes, and so he is thrilled. It's really cool. The campus is right next door to the airport. So he's in heaven. Sometimes they'll have military planes practicing for air shows. And he's like, oh my gosh, this is just amazing. I get to walk out and I see all these airplanes flying. And he's exactly where he needs to be. He's having a great time and doing well in school. He's a good kid. He's in ROTC, and
is he thinking of joining the Air Force? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, he's always known he wanted to do something. He did get his firefighter's license, but he was never able to see any action. I guess you would say see any action or fight fires, because right when he got his license, COVID came out, and they wouldn't let the younger guys go out on the field or whatever they call it. So he never was able to go and be an active firefighter.
And use his license.
Yes, he did all the training, got his license, and he was a volunteer firefighter. So he knew he always wanted to do something of service. So, yeah, and he was in JROTC in high school too. So we knew he was going to do something dangerous. And, my mom is like, how can you let him go out in an airplane? And how can you do that? It's so dangerous. And I said, look, my thing is, I'd rather him die doing what he loves than living hating what he loves.
Or hating what he does.
Hating what he does.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Hating what he does. And sometimes it hurts to say that, but at the same time, I truly believe that you should love what you do.
How about your daughter?
Katie, I call her my little gypsy. She has always been a free spirit. She's, if you see her around church every so often, her hair is completely different colors and her nails are always done. And, she loves doing makeup. She's a little rebel. And I told her, I love that about her because she just doesn't listen to she doesn't do what people just tell her to do. She has a mind of her own.
She has to process it.
She has to process it. And sometimes it's frustrating because I'll tell her something like about religion or about, something else that I find is important. And she's like, well, you always taught me to make my own decisions and do my own research. And so it's kind of coming back to bite me. But at the same time, I do love the fact that she's so independent and she's such a free spirit. And
that's a great way to really understand something is to argue against it.
Oh, and she does. She does.
Yeah, our kids they're total opposites.
Total opposite.
Marie and I are total opposites. Yes. I mean, that's kind of what makes us work because I'm shyer and, more rigid, and she's like just this earthly, kind of free spirit.
I'm not. I'm like, here I am.
And she rubbed off on me. I rubbed off on her. And it's been a great, especially having kids, because I mean, it really helped us in raising the kids. And, kids are great, but it's like just having to get them to heaven has been the biggest stress of my life. It's like, I don't really care what they do as long as they get to heaven. And we try to live our lives where we're examples to get there. But, it's kind of like if I would have died when I was in my early 20s, I don't know if I would have been there, and, not saying I'm going to get there now, but,
you've got a better shot at least.
He has a better shot.
I'm not a perfect person, but I try. And that's all. That's what I always say. It's like, I try. And, it's
in private. He's always said that he wants to be the first saint pitcher.
Yes.
Oh, that would be cool.
And,
right.
And I know I'm probably going to embarrass him, but this is the man, like what you see is what you get. He wakes up wanting to be the best he can be, wanting to be the best Christian he can be, wanting to be the best father, the best dad. And it's one of the most beautiful things about him is he really strives to be the best. And the humility that goes along with it is also just so special. And
she's my biggest cheerleader, and it's.
Oh, I thought he was going to say I'm the biggest thorn in his side or something like that. So, well, thank you, honey.
You're welcome.
You are starting to blush a little.
I do get embarrassed, but yeah.
It takes a lot to embarrass me, but it takes. Yes, and getting back to our kids are very opposite. HP has always been a rule follower, always been a rule follower, and Katie has never been a rule follower. And, but she keeps us on our toes, and she has a good heart. She's smart. She's beautiful. And, she has, I just can't wait to see what God has for her, because there've been a lot of obstacles put up as far as getting her to go along in the faith journey. And that's why I told her, I said, God has a special plan for you because the enemy is trying so hard to get you not to go to church. Like just weird things. Like I've been in church, gosh, I mean, I'm almost 50. So I've been in church all my life.
Wow.
And I have... And so I have never had experiences like she has. Like she'll just have people come up and be mean to her. Like she'll just be sitting there. Like one time she's on her phone, but she's following the mass. Yeah. And she'll just have random people walking up to her and saying, those kids on her phone, or you should get off your phone. But other things, even not related to that. Like she'll just be sitting there minding her own business and somebody will do something ugly or do something mean. And mostly adults, which is kind of odd. But this has been consistent.
But she was following the mass on her phone, the readings and everything, right? Yeah, that's a new thing that people have to get used to.
Yeah, it's not just that, but like going on retreats or something, and she'll have an adult yell at her for no reason, like they thought she was doing something and she was just totally innocent. And I have never had that experience. And so I've told her, look, I can't wait to see what God has for you. You're destined for great things. If the devil's trying this hard, just think of what God's plan is for you. I said, but you have to open your heart, because it's so easy, especially for a teenager, to just want to shut down and say, oh, the church.
Yes.
No, I've had all this negative experience. And I said, no, it's opposite. There's something special in you. And I just can't wait to see what God's plan is for you. But she's stubborn. So we're going to see, if she comes to that realization.
Do you think it was, say, easier for you to relate to your kids since you guys had to come back to your faith?
I think Katie's a lot like I was. And, being a rebel, I was a good-hearted person, but I did a lot of stupid things. And, it's kind of funny, but it's kind of not. But her and I went to El Campo to get her driver's license.
Okay.
And she did not, on the way home, she did not follow the speed. Like, she sped the whole way home. It's like, the only time I ever saw her drive the speed limit was when she left her purse at her boyfriend's house, and she's driving without a license, and she's driving the speed limit. And that's kind of the way I was. And
just pushing it just a little bit. And maybe, not speeding badly, but just pushing
Texas speeding.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, she likes to push things a little bit. And it's really interesting because I found it a lot easier to parent HP because he's a rule follower like I was. And then trying to parent Katie, I get very frustrated sometimes. And he'll say, well, what you're doing is not going to work because she's just like me. I'm like, well, what do you mean? He said, she's not going to listen to that. He's like, come on. If you would have told me that, I wouldn't have followed it, or I would have felt this way. And it's totally foreign to me to parent a child like this because I don't think that way. I've never been a rebel, like that. And
then you have, your older one is just so like such a polar opposite.
Exactly.
So,
he did give us a little trouble here and there, but for the most part,
it's very different.
Very different. But I just need to reiterate that Katie's a great kid, and she just has this joyful spirit about her. She's very sweet and special, but she does give us a run for our money. So she's going to do great things. I can't wait to see what it is. So,
do you all think about it like, well, it's coming back to us after what we did to our parents? It would all be
his fault. Yeah. That's his fault. I was a good kid. I'd never get in my parents' trouble.
I'm still trying to make up for what I did. So it's...
I'm there with you.
Yeah.
I'm right there with you. So I understand that. Were they both born in Louisiana or?
Yes.
What brought you all to Houston?
God.
One day I went up to Marie and I just said, I feel like God wants us to move to Katy, Texas. And
I will never move from Louisiana. I love it.
Really?
I love Louisiana. And we talked about that. I'm like, never. And that was our plan.
And I'm very OCD. I said that earlier, but for my personality to jump up and move, it's not. And we never knew why God wanted us here. I just felt God wanted. And she says, okay, which was kind of shocked me.
So why Katy of all the places?
I just
not downtown Houston, or
I think it had to do with the school system.
The schools,
we were kind of struggling a little bit with the schools in Louisiana, and the kids went to a wonderful school, a wonderful Catholic school. However, our kids had a few little issues that the smaller school couldn't really address, but it wasn't something we couldn't have found outside of the school.
Okay.
And I think it just started getting him thinking.
And we already had an office here, so it was okay that we could transition to this office.
Okay.
It was, it's been a great move. I mean, I love Lafayette because Lafayette is just Catholic. Everybody you know is Catholic. There's like where we live, they had probably 5 Catholic churches within 5 miles from us.
Wow.
And there's
wonderful.
Like morning mass, you could go to 6 o'clock, 6:20, 6:30. They had an 8 o'clock
confessions every day. Every day.
Yeah, 5 o'clock mass so I mean, if you wanted to go to mass during the week, there's no excuse. And then when we moved out here, I struggled because I used to go to 6:20 mass every day. And they just didn't have anything. And, and we just never could find a good fit until St. Faustina came. And, just like our holy days, how many masses we have, that's how Lafayette was. But other churches around here, they might have one mass for Holy Day of Obligation. And it's like, if you really want people to go, you can't expect when you normally have 5 masses on weekends to have 1 mass and, welcome everybody. And, I think that's one thing with St. Faustina. Father Dat really, he wants holy days and he wants to do everything.
Yes.
To get more people here.
to make it more,
right,
convenient for people as well.
And the opportunities for confession were very slim before St. Faustina. You either had to go on a certain day of the week or you had to make an appointment.
Yes.
And it was so difficult for us because we could go to confession whenever. And so now that we have a confession a little more often at St. Faustina and the times that they offer, it's a lot better. And we would always take our kids to confession. We did the first Saturday Mass that was devoted to Mary. We would do that. And then, so we'd go to Mass in the mornings and then we would go to confession. And the best thing that Pitcher ever did was teach our family something very cute, kind of corny, but it's awesome. He would walk out of confession and go, "Clean soul." And so that's what we always do. When we come out, we're like, "Clean soul." And now we'll text each other, "Clean soul." So it's something very special so we are very grateful that Father Dad has brought so much time for confession and to celebrate the holy days.
I had probably the opposite experience as you. I grew up in Hawaii and there weren't a whole lot of choices. But then when my dad retired from the Navy and we moved to the Philippines, it's just Catholic churches all over the place.
Right. Yeah.
And I was surprised. But I would say, "Oh, we're going to be late for Mass." And my cousin would be like, "We got another one in a few minutes." Right. It's like wherever you turn.
Right. So, yeah. And I just saw that. Is it the Philippines that has the second highest number of Catholics?
I think so, in terms of percentage.
So that's pretty cool. So I can definitely see that.
Yeah. When the Pope was last there, I think 7 million people showed up.
This was last week? Was it last week?
No, I think it was a couple of years ago.
A couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. Because I know he just recently celebrated, was it several hundred years or I don't know.
500
years of Catholicism in the Philippines.
In the Philippines. He had a special Mass in the Vatican. Yeah.
Oh, it was at the Vatican. I was thinking it was in the Philippines, but it was at the Vatican. Okay.
Yes. When he was there a few years ago, it was a ton of people. So I think everybody in the country just converged into the capital and they had to shut down all the traffic and everything. It was crazy. Yeah. So I have that. Was it difficult? I mean, did you think about moving back to Louisiana because it was difficult to find masses?
I struggled because I'm not going to say what church or what priest, but, I talked to a priest. They had like 9 o'clock Mass. I said, "Father, I work. It's like I don't get out of here till 10. I won't get to the office till 10:30. Mm-hmm. And he said, "Well, maybe you can just pray." And it's like, I wanted sacraments because, our dating and even our marriage, I can feel the graces from the sacraments. And we've been married, 20?
It'll be 21 years in June.
22 years. And,
I'm not good with
I
dates.
think the sacraments have really joined our marriage and, really helped us out. And I could just feel the graces and, I feel like I need them. And, and just that the way he said it was like, it's not that important. It's like, I'm not waking up at 6 to do a Mass and, And, I wish we had more churches because, like Monsignor, he was early. He woke up like at 3 a.m. So he was in confession like at 5:45 every day. And then we had Mass at 6:20. And, it was easy I'm a morning person, so it was easy for me to get to confession every week, every other week. But
boy, did he need to go to confession that often.
You moved here to Houston. Mm-hmm. Your kids are going to school here in Houston. Yes. I understand a few years back you had some health issues, Pitcher.
I had a stroke in 2016. And I had high blood pressure and just running the business was too much. And I had a stroke.
But we didn't know he had high blood pressure at the time.
Oh, wow.
And he honestly, he works out every day. And sometimes twice he'll do like the cardio in the mornings and then he'll go to the gym. He eats really healthy. It was just this total out of the blue, like what? He was 47. So he was young, totally blindsided.
Wow.
That he had this stroke.
Well, one night my mouth was dropped and she said something and I never saw it. And we got online and we did all the sounds and the tongue test and all that.
Like the signs of a stroke.
Yes.
Do these tests to
and
see.
I passed everything.
He passed everything. I'm like, well, maybe he was just tired.
And I was
just
so just one side of your mouth was drooping?
It was drooping.
Right.
And I was like, oh no, that's a sign of a stroke.
And I was so tired. I thought I just had some kind of bug. And we ended up going to Louisiana. I think it was right after Manresa.
He had gone to Manresa.
And I went to 6:20 Mass. And then I came back to my dad's house and she was getting ready and she said, "You can't see that?" And I looked in the mirror and it was like dropped.
Wow.
And she called my sister. She was going back to Texas and she called my sister. She said, "Make sure he goes to the hospital." Because I didn't want to go because I'm not a big hospital fan. And
well, he's a man. He's like, "There's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing."
So I'm just tired.
Yeah. But there were a few other things too. Like he'd miss his turn. Like we're on the phone or, he's on speakerphone and he's like, "Oh, I missed my turn." This is the same drive that he takes every day.
Oh.
So he'd miss his turn or I'd wake up and, we would, he'd leave around 6 or 6:30, whatever. I'm not sure of the time, but I would wake up a half hour, an hour later and the front door was the door was unlocked. The garage was open.
Oh, wow.
And that
just
would
totally
things
forgetting.
like that
Right.
would just like a lot of things like that. And I'm just like, that's just so weird. But we just kind of blamed it on him being tired.
And that was all in the same day.
Within about a week or so.
Yeah.
Oh.
The whole thing probably happened a month before I actually went to the hospital.
A couple of weeks.
But going to
before.
Manresa that year, I missed a turn. And I remember my dad saying, "Pitcher never misses turns," because I always drive. And, I'm always pretty stable. And, I missed the turn.
Yeah,
and,
he's not like, a lot of times people will like, "Oh, I missed my turn because I was distracted." Or I forgot to add this ingredient or whatever. Not Pitcher. Pitcher, he just has one of these brains that he just doesn't forget things. Like I forget things.
The small thing.
Like I'm very scatterbrained. He's not. And for him to forget a turn or to miss a turn or to forget something is very out of the ordinary for him. Very out of character.
Wow.
But we're at the hospital and my sister was like, "Pitcher," because we're supposed to go out to eat. And when you go to Louisiana, there's certain restaurants you really want to go to. And one I was really looking forward to. And it's like my sister was saying he's going to be so mad because she didn't think I had a stroke. And
because he didn't always droop. It was just, it was periodically.
Yeah, after that, it was gone. And and I had no really big signs. And so they did the CAT scan and then they did a ink CAT scan and they saw I did have a stroke. And
wow.
And then I was in the hospital. This was like right before Thanksgiving. And I was in the hospital for like 3 or 4 days. And I went through physical and I was like perfect. I do all the tests and, I was walking around the hospital and I saw Miss Laura, the one that had Cormdeo. She was a nurse there. And she's like, "What are you doing here?" And it's like, I had a stroke. But I couldn't tell. And I guess looking back, I had some personality changes and
really,
which like the better I got, the more I could see. And, I went through a little depression because I could see stuff that I said to her or, I just wasn't myself.
it was out of character.
Right.
Yeah. Something you probably wouldn't have said at all.
Right. And one of the kids, I was still working out. Everything was mentally right. But one of the kids had a medical issue that had to be taken care of in Tampa, Florida.
Okay.
And we had planned that we'd go to this hospital in the summertime. And I was driving to Lafayette to make sales calls. And she called me up and there's a spot. We have to leave Friday.
Katie, we'll just say Katie.
Yeah.
Katie was having some struggles. And so I called him up and said, "A spot opened. We need to leave now."
Okay.
So it was probably about this time of the year, but we hadn't planned on going until the summer.
And getting back to my OCD, it just blew my mind. It's like kind of in my mind, like she left me. And she had to get an apartment because it was like going to be a extended stay. And it was like, I think it was more of doing it so quick that I just my brain couldn't wrap around it. And it's like, I knew she didn't leave me, but in the back of my mind, she's like, she left me, and HP and I would still go visit them, but it was just a hard time. And
there were, what I like to tell people is his reality wasn't real. The way his brain, while it was healing, it would interpret situations incorrectly.
Wow. And that's what happened in that instance.
Right. Yeah. So he thought I had taken Katie and left him.
Wow.
But I knew she didn't, but I was still struggling with it, you know. And I think the devil was kind of hidden me and said, like, she left you. And, you know, it's like, and, you know, but it was just a hard time in our lives.
Very difficult.
So you noticed, so let me go back. So you noticed the droop. How long? And you said it was a week before you had it looked at?
No, it's probably month.
About 2 or 3.
Oh, wow. That long.
Because it never...
2-3 weeks, a month.
We're
not quite
sure. Happening. And I mean, I remember, where did we go? We went somewhere to pick up for the church.
I don't know.
And Marie went inside. I think it was the Catfish Dinners when we were at the community center.
Okay.
And I was in the car and I fell asleep waiting for her. Like, that's how tired I was. I just fall asleep, and, you know, and I just felt something was, because I wake up like at 3:30 to 4 every day.
Okay.
And I just thought I was just worn out, and my brain couldn't think that something's wrong with me. You know, it's just, I had some kind of bug that was making me tired. And
so what finally got you to go into the doctor?
Me being stubborn.
Calling my sister, and
yeah, it's, you know, I called his sister. I said, you need to make sure he goes because he's not listening to me. And I think that him not listening was a symptom of the stroke. Like, he couldn't make sense that it doesn't make sense that I would have a stroke. I'm too young, you know, I'm just tired.
Healthy exercise and all of that. Yeah.
Right. So it was, like he said, I don't know, it's hard for him to hear, you know, some of the things that he did. It embarrasses him. It upsets him.
But you weren't yourself.
But that's what I told him. Right. It's like, if you break your leg, you're not going to be able to walk on it well until it's healed.
And people understand that. And
people understand that if you're going to walk, or it's going to hurt, or you know, and that's the same thing that I tell him. And like you said, his personality changed, his sense of humor.
Did a procedure have to be done? What kind of procedure?
No, just healing.
Just healing.
Rest. Yeah. Lots of rest.
So you had a stroke, then you just had to rest and heal up.
Rest and heal.
And probably medication, I suppose.
I think for the blood pressure.
Right.
Wow. That must be very difficult. Not at least if you had a procedure done, or if something medically could have been done, it might have been a little easier to deal with.
Right. And I think the most difficult, Rudy, was not knowing if I'd get my husband back.
Oh, if he'd ever be the same.
I don't know if I'm telling more than he wishes me to tell, but like I mentioned, his sense of humor changed. It got mean. And he does not have a mean bone in his body. And, you know, I had put on a few pounds, and he would make fun of my weight, and he'd laugh and laugh. And it was having to reteach him, honey, that's not funny.
Yeah.
And he'd say, it's not. And I say, no, it's not funny. And so that's just like a small.
Like you're married to a different person.
I was married to a different person.
For a while. Wow.
Yeah.
Did it make you angry?
It made me sad.
Very sad.
Very sad.
Now, did you realize that you were doing this?
Not until after.
No.
That must be tough, having to think back about it, something that you've done, but it wasn't really you.
It wasn't him. Yes. And I tell him that all the time. I never fault him for the things he said. You know, the things that he thought, I never fault him because it wasn't him. There was a brain injury and he just needed time to recover. And thankfully, I think he's 100% back.
Yeah, it still bothers me because the way I am, I don't give excuses. And, you know, there's either, you know, I can't say I did this because of my brain. It's like I did it, and that's all that counts. And, you know, I don't really like talking about the stroke, and, you know, it's painful to think about it. But, you know, it's like, that's kind of what helps us grow. And, you know, I was thinking about this interview, and it's like, you know, when you marry your soulmate, when you really listen to God about who you should marry, stuff like this is easy. Like if I was in bed with a diaper, she would be at my side. I mean, there's no doubt that she would never say, I want a divorce. I can't, this is not the guy I married. I mean, if I wouldn't have got married, she would have been at my side. And, and that's what really counts. And letting God set you up with marriage and listen to God. And it's just been great to have somebody like her. And
how different do you think it would have been if you weren't as strong in your faith going through this trial?
It would have been just, I don't even think there's a word to say how different it would be. There were days, and at the time, Katie was having some struggles of her own. And I never told him the bulk of it. Afterwards, now that he's healed, but while he was healing, his brain didn't need stimulation. He needed to just focus on, he needed his brain to be quiet. So I didn't really share everything that was going on with Katie, with him. So a lot of that I felt like I was doing on my own by choice. It was such a difficult time because our lives have been so easy. Growing up, we've always been the prayers. We've always been the people that, people came to us and said, we need you to pray for this. We need you to pray. We've never had to be prayed for. And knowing with our, to answer your question, having that faith, there were days that I was so exhausted and so spent emotionally and physically, I couldn't pray. But I knew that my choir family, my Women of Mercy family, I knew they were praying for me. And knowing that is what got me through. Because just to repeat, there were days I was too exhausted to pray. And I literally felt some mornings that the prayer was what was getting me out of bed in the morning. Like I physically felt people pulling me out of bed with their prayers. And I had never experienced that before. And so, yes, I feel that in that way, knowing the power of prayer and being able to recognize what it was and that we were going to get through this somehow, we might not be the same, but I knew we would get through it somehow.
How was it on the kids?
I don't know.
Were you able to kind of shield them from it for the most part?
No, that was.
And they were teenagers at the time too, right. So they're going through their own thing.
HP would have been 15. Katie was 12. HP was amazing. He assumed the dad role. He hung with Christmas lights, and I have to say our neighbor Pete helped in hanging the Christmas lights and doing some other things around the house that we really needed. It was a lot of pressure on him, especially the time that Katie and I left, because he had to kind of fend for himself. Because with the stroke, the fatigue is just so enormous. He would come home and just go straight to bed. So HP was kind of on his own. During that time, HP developed Tourette's. And we didn't know at the time that childhood trauma will bring on Tourette syndrome, the tics and things like that.
Okay.
And so that's how it manifested itself. He was doing okay in school and he was doing fine, but the emotional stress was there, and it showed through with the Tourette's. But the beauty about that is it goes away usually, and it did with him. And he's such a cool kid. He went out and bought a shirt that says Tourette's ticks me off, and he wore it to the first day of school. And I think he really gave us all a great, the gift of a sense of humor. And that's been one of the things that has kept us going along with the faith too.
I'll bring a lot of joy to the family.
He's so goofy.
Mainly because I don't ask if they're laughing at me or with me.
Okay.
So I think that's the key to the humor, because the stroke has been a great, like my personality has changed. It's been a little sillier, and, I say a lot more off the cuff stuff that I wouldn't say before.
Okay.
And I would never say anything like that before the stroke.
Like a little filter's going.
Yeah.
But it's not so much that I'm like, it's just enough to go, oh my goodness, there you, like more dad jokes.
So that's the silver lining right there.
Right. And the kids love that part of it. And
there are a lot of silver linings. And one of them that is just, one of the things that I love is when he's being sneaky or being, the Cajuns call it canaille, kind of mischievous. His stroke smile comes out. It droops. And it is the cutest thing. And I just love it so much. But he can't get away with anything because I'm like, oh no.
Because that stroke
smile is coming out. And I love it because it reminds me of what we've been through and that we're still here and we're still together and stronger than ever. So I love his stroke smile.
That's awesome. You have that little thing there that just reminds you about, the trial that you went through and everything that, you had to go through and finally how you overcame it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So
plus,
this was
he can't get away with anything now.
You've got to tell. That's your tell.
That's his tell.
You can't play poker or anything.
Nope.
Nope.
No bluffing.
Nope.
So this all happened while you were here at St. Faustina. Right. Were we in the new building or were we still at the...
We were at the school.
Still at the school.
We were at the school. And when this kind of started happening, just weird things would happen. I remember we don't usually fight. Well, we have disagreements and we get aggravated with each other, but we had a full-blown fight before one of the masses at St. Faustina because I don't even remember what it was. I just remember being so shocked. He was kind of being ugly or said something. I don't even remember what it was, but it was just so out of character that I think that's probably why I reacted so harshly is because it's out of character for him.
But you knew he had a stroke at this time.
Not at that time.
Oh, no, not
No, this was still in the beginning. There were a lot of little odd things that I can look back and say, he did this and he did that and he did that. But we're good now. We're good.
How about people at the church? Did they know that so they didn't know that you were going through this whole personality change or did it affect?
We kind of hid it.
I didn't change like anything I was doing as far as working out church. And, I did have a lot of people here praying for me because they knew about it. But I don't think anybody could really tell, because.
Yeah. And I think I'm going to use my dad's words. My mom has dementia. And one of the things that he does is he wants to protect her dignity. And I didn't have the words at the time, but that's what I was doing. I was protecting his dignity. I didn't think people needed to hear. People needed to know.
I'm a very private person.
This is really the first time he's talked about it. And we actually talked about if we were going to talk about this because he is very private.
We prayed before the interview. It's like we wanted the Holy Spirit to use our lives that might help somebody else that might be going through similar situations. So, I don't want to hide what's in the closet, but, I want that to come out where people can see that there is hope and
as a source of inspiration for other people who may be going through something similar. So you mentioned your mom has dementia. Did that manifest before all of this happened?
It did, but we didn't recognize it. We knew, it's probably about 15 years ago, her behavior started changing. But we didn't attribute it to anything. And then actually after he had his stroke, like a year after he had his stroke, I started looking at my mom's behavior and saying, whoa, this is very similar. The changes in her personality and her conversations and sense of humor. And, doing some tests and stuff, they actually looked at some brain scans and realized that she had several mini strokes that contributed to
so this. That your experience with Pitcher actually helped you.
It actually helped heal a lot of pain. My mom was the best mom, just loving, creative, always had us at church doing choir. She's amazing. She was a teacher. She was brilliant. She loved music and theater, and but I wasn't anticipating sharing this, but some of the things that she would do, like when I had young babies, she would come to our town and visit all her cousins and go back home. And I'm like, wait, you travel an hour and you didn't even come see me or help me with my new babies? You know, there were a lot of, and I'm like, what grandmother does that?
And that wasn't her.
That wasn't her. And so for years, and this is one of the things that I would go look at Mother's Day cards and take one, and it says, for the mother who's always been there, and I'd put it back. For the mother who, does everything for, her kids, whatever. I just put that back, and I just struggle, and I'd just be sitting there in the card aisle just crying because I couldn't find a Mother's Day card that reflected where we were in that stage of our lives. Wow. And so recognizing that it was a stroke and having to go through what we did with Pitcher brought so much forgiveness because I was able to recognize what was going on with my mom. And so there was a lot of forgiveness there. And
yet another silver lining.
There were a lot of.
That's why I had the stroke. I was trying to get her to forgive her mom.
For healing.
It was sometimes you gotta just, sometimes you just gotta bite the bullet and do what's best for her.
He suffered for the rest of us. He's such a saint.
You took one for the team.
Yeah, I did.
Such a martyr. Such a martyr. So yeah, it's and right now we just placed her in an assisted living facility in Louisiana. And this place is just amazing. And she's loved and she's taken care of and she's happy. She is, she's like a child right now. She knows who we all are. Thank goodness.
That's good.
She knows who we all are.
Yes.
But the things that she finds joy in they're just precious. And it just reminds me to find joy in the things. Like she'll pick up a dead leaf, like it is dead and crispy. And she'll say, look how beautiful the veining is in this leaf. And look, it's golden. And if you hold it up to the sun and,
wow.
Just like, look at these flowers. And she'll just notice things about the flowers that I'm like, it's a dead flower, but she'll take it and say, look how beautiful this is. And that's how she lives her life. And everybody's her best friend. And I'm like, wow, it's really beautiful to see. And
she can still see beauty in life and experience beauty of the world, even though she's going through this.
Right. Yes. She's very happy where she is. Mm-hmm.
Now you, Marie, I remember you telling me something outside of the church one day. And I hope you don't mind talking about it. I just saw it was such a great way to look at things. You said something like, this year, I'm going to take care of myself.
Yes. This is the year of Marie, is what I said, I think, probably.
I think that is some people forget to take care of themselves sometimes.
Yes. It was after all the commotion with the stroke and Katie's illness and HP's Tourette's. And there were a lot of other things that happened during this year. We lost his dad unexpectedly. And there were some other family things that happened that were pretty traumatic.
So it was a rough time for all of you.
I'd say 2 years, a year and a half, it was super like boom, boom, boom. And like several times I'm like, God, I'm not Job. You can just stop. You can just cut this out, And so after 2.5 years, I was like, no, this is it. I have to take care of myself because if I don't, you have to. You just have to. So yes, I declared it the year of Marie.
And that was a very smart thing to do because I think a lot of people forget about that. Mm-hmm. They forget to take care of themselves. They're so focused on helping other people that, it's sort of like on the airplane. They tell you got to put the mask on yourself.
Put the mask on first, yes.
First before anyone else. And was it difficult for you to do that?
No. When you love yourself as much as I do, it's easy to do. No, early on in our parenthood, I had made that decision that I was going to take care of myself. And he's amazing. He's allowed it, go to the gym. He's encouraged me to go to the gym, go take some time off, go get a massage, whatever. So he's really helped with that as well. So, but at that time, after so many years of just, having to wake up and you just have to go and take care of other people, it was easy for me to say, okay, I'm going to take care of myself.
Because that was a pretty rough couple of years. So just one thing after the next.
It was insane. And like I said earlier, nothing has ever happened to us. We were like the most boring people in the world. So this really totally blindsided us. And like, whoa, this is crazy.
So just a whole lifetime of trials within just a couple of years.
Exactly.
Because just one of those things.
It is crazy. And now I'm like, you know what? If we could get through that, we can get through anything. And that's how I feel. And I think that's what we've told our kids too. Like, look what we went through. Look what we went through. And, especially right now with a lot of things that are going on in the world, it's quite, there's a lot of depression among young kids. And, being able to tell the kids, no matter how bad it seems or how bad it gets, there will always be the other side. You will always get through the other side. Even if you don't see any light, it's going to be there, and never give up. So it was hard to learn and it was hard to live, but I hate to say I'm glad we went through it, because I don't think I'm glad we went through it, but there were a lot of fruits. There are a lot of fruits from it.
What advice would you have for people who are going through something from the different perspectives? For you, Pitcher, who's the one who was living through that, recovering from the stroke, and then you, Marie, somebody who was working with somebody who was going through that.
I think the main thing that got us through this was God. And, we're just human beings, and, we always had faith during the good and the bad. And, we just always, God was always there for us. And, and our marriage has always been so much stronger when we do stuff with God, like retreats and stuff in the church. And, I feel that's what really got us through this. And, it came to my brain a minute ago, but I was thinking about the St. Joseph's consecration. I just did my second one and finished on the feast day last Friday. And I feel like this one has given us so much. I mean, like I can see stuff that happened from that Friday. And this goes back to the stroke. Like when we first got married, we would say a decade of the rosary every night. And like I would say a prayer. She would repeat it. We'd do the Our Father.
Because it became our prayer, not just his prayer or my prayer.
Okay.
And we do that for each Hail Mary. And we did that for 20 years. And Marie said, we've been saying this for 20 years.
Let's switch it up a little bit. Let's do something different.
And my brain during the stroke said, she doesn't want to pray. And, because I'm good
how
at,
you perceived it.
Yeah. And I'm good with saying the same thing every single day. And
he could eat the same thing every single day.
Yeah. I had prayer corps that I would say the same prayers. And I love saying these same prayers. And it got old for her. And it took us 2 years to get back into it. And it was like that Friday, I said, I'm not going through this whole Lent without us starting to say our prayers. And we just brought it up again. And it was just like, oh, it's been so great. Because, we kind of know what on each of our hearts, what we're praying for. And it just kind of out loud kind of brings us together, where we're praying for the family, for our own needs, for the business. And so it's just been so great that, and I really feel a lot has to do with St. Joseph. And, a few other things happened, but it was...
He's doing the consecration to St. Joseph.
Yeah, and it was just really great to kind of see the fruits of that. And, it kind of tells us that, like, we're not in control. God's the one that's leading our marriage, our lives. And, it's been a really great journey. And
how about you, Marie? What advice would you have for somebody who's taking care of someone like an Alzheimer's patient or dementia patient, or somebody who's recovering from a stroke?
There's a lot. There's a lot. But recently, somebody reached out to me, and this person's having a very similar experience with just kind of we call it the Job life.
Yes.
Just things happening. And he said, and I haven't heard from this person in quite a while. And he's like, I just didn't know who else to talk to. He said, you're the only one who's been through it. He said, and I know my friends are tired of hearing from me. And I said, no. I said, you go to your friends. They're the ones, they want to be there for you. Don't hide these things from your friends. Tell them that you need them for support. You need them to pray for you, because that is what's going to get you through this, or your friends' prayers. And, there were some things that I did hide from people, but that was to respect his dignity. But as far as, and sometimes you just can't hide it. Like, I remember going to choir practice and I just cried the whole time because I couldn't help it. And find the one constant in your life, find something that's constant. And for me, that was going to choir practice every week. That was the one thing that I can count on. Every week's going to be there. Even though I'm crying the whole time, I'm not really able to practice. But that was my constant. So first, reach out to your friends. Don't be afraid of overwhelming them, because that's what they're there for. Ask them to pray and find your constant.
What would you say to people, to the friends? What advice would you give to them?
Listen. You don't have to say anything. Just listen.
I know sometimes people want to give advice.
Don't give advice.
They want to say something. And
I remember it's going to get better. It's going to get better. But you don't know that. You can't tell somebody it's going to get better. And I know that sounds kind of harsh, but just we're praying for you. We're here. Whatever you need, we're here.
So that's what somebody going through something like that would like to hear. We're here for you.
That's what I wanted. That's what I needed to hear. Everybody's different, but that's what I would do. Yeah. Build your support system of prayers and people around you.
We thank you so much for telling your story, for, being brave enough to come and open your hearts out. And hopefully anybody who, who's going through something similar will be inspired by your story.
I hope so. Do
you have any last words that you'd like to, any bit of advice when you look back at everything you all have been through?
Just hang in there. Don't give up. Life always gets better.
Thank you guys so much.
All right, thanks.
We hope we look forward to seeing you all, and hopefully we can all get together after all of this is over, and and just talk about more of those silver linings.
Yes, sounds good. We'd love that.